don't think I can forgive you for this.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Movies For You channel. Today, we're diving deep into The Last of Us Season 2, a show that's been on everyone's lips, especially after the seismic impact of Naughty Dog's The Last of Us Part 2 back in 2020. First off, let's talk about the elephant in the room. The Last of Us Part 2 was, and still is, one of the most divisive games in recent memory. I've noticed something fascinating over the years. When people discuss Ellie's revenge story, their interpretations couldn't be more different. Some see it as a beautiful tragedy, a narrative soaked in grief and ultimately about forgiveness. That's the story I experienced. But others? They call it a violent excess, a brutal and meaningless exercise that turns Ellie, once a beloved icon, into an unambiguous villain. And here's the kicker: even if you disagree with the harsh critics, the game's openness to such wildly different readings is bold. It trusts its audience to wrestle with complex emotions and moral ambiguity. Season 2, playing it too safe? Now, let's pivot to the HBO series. Season 1 already showed signs of playing it safe, sometimes too safe. It leaned heavily on exposition, with characters often breaking the fourth wall by explaining their feelings and motives directly to the audience. Remember Pedro Pascal's Joel telling Ellie about his second chance at being a father? It felt a little on the nose, right? Season 2 takes this to a new level. The show seems terrified that viewers might miss the themes. Instead of trusting us to feel and interpret organically, it insists on spelling everything out. The constant thematic hammering robs the story of its emotional subtlety and leaves us with a patronizing tone. It's like the showrunners are saying, "Here's exactly how you should feel," rather than letting us discover it ourselves. What's lost in translation? This approach is especially disappointing because the original game thrived on ambiguity and complexity. It respected players enough to let them sit with discomfort, question characters' choices, and decide what justice or forgiveness really means. The show's version, however, feels like it's walking on eggshells, afraid to alienate anyone, so it softens the edges and smooths out the rough patches. The result? A story that feels less like a bold tragedy and more like a safe melodrama. So, is Season 2 of The Last of Us a worthy continuation? It's complicated. The performances remain strong, and the production values are top-notch. But the storytelling feels constrained, shackled by a need to explain rather than evoke. For fans of the game, this might feel like a missed opportunity to capture the raw, challenging heart of the source material. For newcomers, it might just come across as another prestige drama, well-made but emotionally predictable. In The Last of Us Part 2, Abby's character is introduced with a deliberate sense of mystery and distance, creating an intentional disconnect between player and protagonist that invites reflection and discomfort. The show, however, removes this layer by having Abby openly explain her vendetta through a villainous monologue before her violent acts, leaving no room for ambiguity or personal interpretation. Similarly, Ellie's internal conflict and motivations, which the game reveals gradually through sparse flashbacks and subtle storytelling, are instead laid bare in a condensed and sometimes jumbled manner across the season. This approach undermines the emotional complexity and moral ambiguity that made her arc compelling in the game. The show's insistence on clarifying every moment of Ellie's violent descent through explicit dialogue and exposition turns what was once a challenging, nuanced narrative into something that feels like an annotated explainer video. Moreover, the performances of Bella Ramsey and Pedro Pascal, while earnest, struggle under the weight of this heavy-handed storytelling. Their portrayals lack the depth and subtlety of their game counterparts, largely because the script demands constant explanation rather than allowing silence and subtext to carry emotional weight. This shift results in a version of the story that feels less like a haunting tragedy and more like a straightforward drama that tells rather than shows. In summary, Season 2's narrative choices, particularly its overt exposition and removal of ambiguity, diminish the mystique and emotional resonance that defined The Last of Us Part 2. By prioritizing clarity over complexity, the show sacrifices the original's bold storytelling risk in favor of a safer, more conventional television drama.